Judging by appearance leads to downfall. It is one of the oldest lessons humanity keeps forgetting, over and over again. People are quick to evaluate others based on clothing, status symbols, facial expressions, or even body language. They think they can measure the worth of a human being in seconds, without ever listening, without ever asking, without ever truly understanding who stands before them. Yet every time, history proves that this kind of shallow judgment invites humiliation. When someone makes the mistake of mocking or underestimating another person simply because of how they look, they set themselves up for a downfall that is often unforgettable. In countless real-life examples, appearances have deceived. A billionaire walking into a luxury store in simple jeans and sneakers is sometimes treated as if he cannot afford even a single item. An influential leader traveling casually without bodyguards may be dismissed as an ordinary traveler. A genius with uncombed hair may be mistaken for someone who lacks seriousness or intelligence. But the truth is, power, wealth, and knowledge rarely dress up for validation. They do not need to scream for attention, because they carry their weight silently. Those who fail to see beyond the surface often end up embarrassed when reality reveals itself. Airports and airlines are places where this shallow judgment is most visible. People assume that the best-dressed travelers in expensive suits must be the most important. They assume the man in plain clothes belongs in economy and not in business class. Staff members sometimes allow this false perception to cloud their professionalism, forgetting that their duty is not to judge, but to serve with respect. And yet, this mistake is repeated too often. The traveler in question might be the very one with authority, influence, or status that surpasses anyone else in the room. By mocking him, the staff does not just insult a person, they insult themselves, their company, and the values they claim to uphold. There is a dangerous arrogance in thinking appearance equals identity. Mocking someone for what they wear, how they look, or how they behave outwardly is a reflection of the mocker's insecurity. People who judge so quickly reveal that they have not developed depth. They rely on superficial signs because they lack the wisdom to look deeper. They miss the subtle details, the confidence in silence, the calmness in restraint, the dignity in patience. These are the signs of true power, but only those who pay attention can recognize them. The rest laugh too soon, only to regret later. When judgment is made by appearance, it creates a false sense of superiority. The airline staff who mocked a passenger might have felt powerful in that moment. They may have thought they had control because they assumed the passenger was just another traveler. But the irony is that such power is an illusion. It exists only for seconds, until the truth comes out. When that passenger turns out to be a CEO, a leader, or a person of immense influence, the staff's false superiority crumbles instantly. What seemed like control transforms into fear, what seemed like victory becomes defeat, and what felt like confidence turns into regret. Judging by appearance is not just an individual mistake, it damages organizations too. When staff members act on shallow assumptions, they stain the reputation of the entire company. A single moment of mockery can undo years of branding and trust building. Customers remember humiliation far longer than they remember service. They share these stories, and soon the world knows about the arrogance of employees who could not look past appearances. It is not just a personal downfall, it is a downfall of credibility, of honor, and of professional ethics. The downfall comes because judgment by appearance ignores the core of human equality. Every person, whether dressed in rags or suits, whether walking or arriving in a limousine, deserves respect. The act of deciding who is worthy and who is not based on external markers is the root of disrespect. And disrespect always circles back. The one who mocks ends up mocked. The one who belittles ends up belittled. The cycle of downfall is triggered by the very act of underestimation. Many powerful individuals deliberately choose simplicity. They do not wear their wealth on their sleeves. They test people by how they are treated when they appear ordinary. It is in those moments that the truth about others comes out. Those who offer kindness and respect to all, regardless of status, pass the test. Those who mock and belittle fail miserably. And in failing, they expose their character flaws to the very people they thought they could laugh at. In the story of the mocked CEO, the airline staff failed this timeless test. They believed appearance told the full story. They thought laughter at a passenger's expense would elevate their own image. But what it did instead was reveal their lack of wisdom. It showed that they did not understand the deeper truth, that appearance is temporary, deceptive, and often meaningless in measuring the worth of a person. Their downfall was not just in being exposed but in losing respect, credibility, and dignity all at once. Judging by appearance leads to downfall because it blinds people. It blinds them to potential greatness standing quietly in front of them. It blinds them to opportunities for genuine connection and respect. It blinds them to the values of humility, service, and professionalism. By the time the blindness is lifted and the truth is revealed, it is always too late. The mocker has already spoken, the insult has already been delivered, and the damage has already been done. The only thing left is the bitter taste of regret, a taste that lingers far longer than any fleeting moment of arrogance. Mockery often hides insecurity. When someone chooses to laugh at another person, to belittle their actions, or to make them the subject of ridicule, it rarely comes from a place of strength. Instead, it often springs from weakness, fear, or a lack of confidence within the one doing the mocking. People who are secure in themselves, who are confident in their own worth, rarely feel the need to humiliate others. They do not see the value in tearing someone down because their self-esteem does not depend on it. But those who mock reveal, without realizing it, the fragility of their own ego. Mockery is a mask. It pretends to be humor, but underneath it lies something darker. A person mocks to distract others from their own shortcomings. They point fingers at someone else's supposed flaws so that no one notices their own. It is a defense mechanism, a shield against exposure. In an airline setting, for example, staff who mock a passenger may not be acting from authority but from insecurity about their own role. Perhaps they feel powerless in the hierarchy of their job, so they search for a target who appears weaker. The act of mocking creates an illusion of control, but in reality, it exposes their lack of inner strength. The psychology of mockery is rooted in projection. A person laughs at someone's clothes because they themselves fear being seen as inadequate. They make fun of someone's behavior because they cannot accept their own imperfections. They highlight another's supposed weakness because it reflects something they secretly carry inside. This is why mockery often feels cruel. It is less about the target and more about the insecurities of the person delivering it. The victim may not even realize why they are being mocked, but the mocker knows, deep down, that the laughter is aimed at their own shadow. In professional environments, mockery is especially revealing. Staff members who are confident in their service, secure in their professionalism, and proud of their company do not waste time ridiculing passengers. Their focus is on duty and respect. But when mockery slips through, it signals that something is missing. It could be poor training, low self-worth, or dissatisfaction with the job. The act of belittling a customer is not an expression of power, it is an outcry of weakness disguised as humor. Those who watch can sense it. Those who experience it can feel it. The laughter rings hollow because it does not come from joy, but from insecurity trying to mask itself. Mockery also thrives in groups because insecurity loves company. Alone, an insecure person may not dare to ridicule someone. But when surrounded by others, they seek validation through laughter. They want approval, so they create a spectacle at someone else's expense. In these moments, the mocker's insecurity is amplified by the group dynamic. They feel safer, hidden behind collective laughter, but in truth, the weakness is only multiplied. When the person mocked later turns out to be someone of great importance, the downfall is magnified, and the group's insecurity is laid bare for all to see. There is also a deep irony in mockery. The very act meant to diminish someone often ends up diminishing the one who mocks. A staff member who laughs at a passenger's simplicity may believe they look powerful in front of colleagues. But when the truth is revealed, when it is discovered that the passenger was a CEO, a leader, or a person of status, the mocker is stripped of dignity. The insecurity that led to mockery is exposed in public. What was once hidden behind laughter now stands in the open, undeniable and shameful. The mocker falls not because they mocked, but because the mocking revealed their true self to the world. Mockery hides insecurity because it is easier to laugh at others than to face one's own flaws. People do not want to confront their fears of inadequacy, so they cover them up by pointing outward. This creates the illusion that they are strong, that they are in control, that they are above the one they laugh at. But it is only an illusion. True strength is quiet, respectful, and humble. It has no need to ridicule. In fact, it often protects those who are mocked, standing against ridicule instead of participating in it. The downfall of mockery is inevitable because insecurity cannot stay hidden forever. It reveals itself in tone, in words, in the choice of targets. The one who mocks a passenger may think no one notices their underlying fear, but others sense it. They see the unease in the way the laughter sounds forced, the way the smile does not quite reach the eyes, the way the mocker quickly looks around for validation. The insecurity is there, thinly veiled, waiting for a moment of truth to rip away the mask. In the airline story, the staff's mockery was not about the CEO at all. It was about themselves. Their laughter revealed their lack of respect, their lack of training, their lack of inner strength. They mocked because they were insecure in their own position, in their own worth, in their own sense of importance. The CEO did not need to mock back. He only needed to reveal who he was, and their insecurity collapsed on its own. The mockery that was meant to belittle him ended up exposing them. Respect costs nothing but gives everything. It is one of the simplest values in life, yet it carries immeasurable weight in how relationships are built, how reputations are maintained, and how legacies are remembered. To show respect requires no wealth, no authority, and no extraordinary talent. It is as effortless as choosing the right words, as easy as offering a smile, as basic as treating another person with dignity regardless of who they are or how they appear. And yet, this act of humility and decency can transform entire situations, while the absence of it can destroy opportunities in an instant. When respect is given, it creates an invisible bridge between people. It communicates acknowledgement, acceptance, and value. A respected passenger feels welcomed, a respected employee feels motivated, a respected leader feels trusted. This bridge is not built with grand gestures but with simple acts that cost nothing: listening attentively, refraining from mockery, addressing someone politely, or offering help without hesitation. These are small investments that require no money, no sacrifice of power, no loss of dignity. Yet the return is immeasurable because respect, once given, often comes back multiplied. In the case of airline staff, respect should be the foundation of their role. Every passenger, whether rich or poor, famous or unknown, young or old, carries with them the same right to dignity. A respectful tone of voice, a courteous gesture, or even a moment of patience can turn a routine service into a lasting positive memory. What costs nothing to the staff, such as saying, "Sir," "Ma'am," or "Please," can mean everything to a passenger who feels valued. Respect transforms an ordinary journey into a human experience where dignity is preserved. The irony is that disrespect often comes at a higher cost than anyone realizes. Staff members who mock a passenger think they are gaining amusement or asserting power. But what they lose in return is far greater: credibility, trust, and reputation. That single act of disrespect becomes a stain that others remember. It spreads in conversations, in reviews, in stories shared online. The cost of disrespect is invisible at first, but it grows over time, damaging the image of the individual and the organization they represent. Meanwhile, the cost of respect is zero, yet its rewards ripple endlessly in ways that cannot always be measured immediately. Respect also has the power to diffuse conflict before it escalates. Many confrontations, whether in customer service or personal life, ignite because someone feels disrespected. A dismissive tone, a mocking laugh, or an impatient gesture can spark anger in seconds. On the other hand, respect can calm emotions even in the tensest situations. A gentle response can silence hostility, a respectful acknowledgement can reduce frustration, and a sincere apology can rebuild trust. Respect is a shield that prevents unnecessary battles. It is the strongest tool a person can carry into any interaction, and it costs nothing to use it. When respect is absent, it reveals not the weakness of the one being disrespected but of the one refusing to show it. Disrespect is loud, but it is hollow. It reflects arrogance, insecurity, or ignorance. Respect, in contrast, reflects wisdom. It demonstrates maturity and strength, because it shows the ability to value others without feeling threatened. A CEO who respects every employee, from the janitor to the executive, shows greatness. A leader who speaks kindly to a waiter or a taxi driver demonstrates the kind of power that is admired rather than feared. These acts of respect require no wealth, no extra effort, yet they leave an impression far deeper than any display of authority. In societies where respect is prioritized, harmony thrives. People trust one another more, cooperation increases, and progress is smoother. In workplaces, respect creates loyalty. Employees who feel respected work harder, stay longer, and dedicate themselves to the company. Customers who feel respected return, speak well of the service, and encourage others to engage. In families, respect builds bonds that last generations. It does not matter how much money or status one has, without respect, relationships crumble. With respect, even the simplest of relationships flourish. The story of airline staff mocking a CEO is not just about a moment of arrogance, it is about forgetting that respect should never depend on appearances. Respect should not be selective, reserved only for those who look wealthy or important. True respect is given to all, equally and unconditionally. If the staff had chosen to treat every passenger with dignity, they would not have been humiliated when the truth of the CEO's identity was revealed. Their downfall came not because they lacked skill or resources, but because they failed to offer something that costs nothing yet means everything. Respect also elevates the giver. A person who shows respect earns admiration without asking for it. Others notice when someone is polite, when someone treats all equally, when someone carries themselves with humility. Respect makes a person memorable in the best way. Long after material possessions fade and titles are forgotten, people remember how they were treated. They remember the kindness, the courtesy, the dignity they experienced in someone's presence. Respect leaves an imprint that outlasts wealth, authority, and even power. There is a quiet strength in respect. It does not shout, it does not boast, but it is felt deeply by everyone who receives it. The airline staff in the story had the chance to show this strength. They had the chance to create a positive experience with something that required no effort, no sacrifice, no cost. Yet they chose mockery over respect, arrogance over humility, judgment over dignity. And in doing so, they revealed the truth that while respect costs nothing but gives everything, the absence of it can take away everything one hoped to keep. Power reveals itself in silence, not noise. True strength does not need to announce itself, it does not need to demand recognition, and it does not waste energy proving its worth to others. The most powerful individuals are often the quietest in the room because they understand that authority, respect, and influence are not earned through loud declarations but through calm presence. Silence carries a weight that noise can never match. It draws attention without effort, it creates space for others to reveal themselves, and it speaks louder than words ever could. When someone is insecure or desperate to be noticed, they raise their voice, they exaggerate their actions, and they rely on noise to create an illusion of importance. But noise is fleeting. It may capture attention for a moment, but it rarely leaves a lasting impression. Silence, on the other hand, lingers. It makes others curious. It forces people to pay attention not to words but to presence, not to showmanship but to substance. Silence is the language of those who know they do not need to compete with others to prove their place. In situations of conflict or disrespect, silence becomes even more powerful. When mocked, a weak person reacts with anger, with shouting, with attempts to defend themselves through noise. But when someone responds with calm silence, it unsettles the mocker. The laughter begins to feel shallow, the noise loses its force, and the one making the noise begins to feel exposed. Silence shifts the power dynamic completely. It demonstrates restraint, patience, and self-control, which are the hallmarks of true strength. A person who can remain composed in the face of ridicule holds far more power than those who hide behind loud voices. Silence is also a test. It allows others to reveal their true character. When the airline staff mocked a passenger, his silence did not show weakness. It allowed them to expose their arrogance, their lack of professionalism, and their misplaced confidence. He did not need to argue, to raise his voice, or to demand respect. His silence created the stage on which they revealed themselves. And when the truth of his identity as a CEO came to light, the silence he had maintained became his greatest weapon. It magnified the impact of his final word, making it unforgettable. Power in silence is rooted in discipline. It takes strength to hold back words when insulted, to remain calm when provoked, and to observe instead of reacting. Many confuse silence with passivity, but it is the opposite. It is active control over oneself. It is the conscious choice to conserve energy, to wait for the right moment, and to let actions speak louder than arguments. This discipline is what separates true leaders from pretenders. The louder one shouts about power, the less power they usually have. The quieter one remains, the more power they command without saying anything. Noise is often about ego, while silence is about confidence. Those who are loud often seek validation from others, needing constant approval and recognition. They cannot be comfortable without attention. But those who embrace silence already know their worth. They are not moved by the opinions of others because their confidence comes from within. This inner strength radiates outward, making silence more intimidating, more commanding, and more memorable than any boastful display could ever be. Silence also creates anticipation. When a powerful person remains quiet in a situation where everyone expects a reaction, the silence itself becomes a statement. People wait, they wonder, they speculate about what will be said or done next. This anticipation builds pressure, and when words finally come, they land with far greater weight. The CEO in the story understood this principle. By allowing silence to dominate during the mockery, he built an atmosphere where his eventual revelation carried maximum impact. The last word became heavier, sharper, and more defining because it was preceded by calm restraint. Silence can also be a form of respect to oneself. Choosing not to respond to insults or mockery protects one's dignity. It prevents the loss of composure, it avoids lowering oneself to the level of the mocker, and it keeps control of the situation intact. Noise hands over control to emotions, while silence keeps control firmly in one's own hands. It is not about ignoring disrespect but about rising above it in a way that leaves no doubt about where the real strength lies. In leadership, silence is often the most effective tool. Great leaders listen more than they speak. They allow others to express themselves fully, knowing that listening reveals far more than speaking does. Through silence, they gather information, they observe patterns, and they understand people at a deeper level. This ability to listen and observe gives them insights that loud and arrogant individuals often miss. And when they finally speak, their words carry the weight of wisdom earned through patience. The story of the mocked CEO demonstrates how silence can completely reverse power. The staff believed their noise, their laughter, and their mockery gave them control. But his silence disarmed them. It created space for their arrogance to unfold, for their disrespect to become visible to all. And when the silence finally broke with the last word, it carried the force of authority, dignity, and justice. The lesson is clear: noise may feel powerful in the moment, but silence always endures. It is silence that reveals who truly holds control, who truly commands respect, and who truly owns the situation. Revenge is best served with dignity. The idea of revenge often brings to mind anger, loud confrontations, and dramatic scenes, but the most powerful form of revenge is the one delivered with calm, controlled, and dignified precision. When someone chooses dignity over rage, silence over chaos, and composure over noise, they transform revenge from an act of pettiness into an act of justice. It no longer appears as a reaction born of weakness but as a deliberate demonstration of strength. Dignity makes revenge memorable, not because of how it destroys the offender, but because of how it elevates the one who delivers it. There is a natural temptation to retaliate with equal force when wronged. When mocked, the instinct is to mock back. When insulted, the urge is to throw back sharper words. When disrespected, the impulse is to make the other person feel the same sting of humiliation. But this form of revenge rarely satisfies, because it lowers the person to the same level as the offender. It strips away composure and gives the other side the satisfaction of seeing their target lose control. Dignity, on the other hand, denies them that satisfaction. It demonstrates that no matter what insult or mockery was thrown, it could not shake the target's sense of self. That alone is revenge more powerful than any insult could ever be. Dignified revenge often involves patience. It is not about acting immediately in the heat of the moment but about waiting for the right time when the truth naturally comes to light. The mocked passenger in the airline story did not shout back or demand recognition right away. He waited. His silence and composure allowed the staff to expose themselves fully, to show their arrogance and lack of respect without interruption. And when the right moment came, his revelation as a CEO was not just revenge, it was justice wrapped in dignity. He did not need to humiliate them loudly, the weight of his truth humiliated them more than anger ever could. There is also a deeper wisdom in revenge served with dignity. It ensures that the act is not driven purely by emotion but guided by self-respect and clarity. Anger clouds judgment, while dignity clears it. A person who reacts with rage may later regret their words or actions, but a person who responds with dignity rarely needs to regret anything. Their revenge is not an outburst, it is a statement. It becomes an example to others, a story retold not with shame but with admiration. People respect the one who remains calm under fire far more than the one who explodes in fury. Revenge with dignity is also silent proof of superiority. It says, without words, that the mockery, the insult, or the humiliation did not diminish the target in any way. Instead, it exposed the weakness of the offender. By refusing to be dragged down to the same level, the dignified response forces the offender to confront their own smallness. The person who was mocked remains standing tall, unshaken, untouched, while the mocker finds themselves drowning in regret. That contrast is what makes dignified revenge so unforgettable. Dignity transforms revenge into a form of teaching. It delivers a lesson that words could never communicate. The staff in the story learned more from the CEO's calm revelation of who he was than they would have from hours of shouting. His dignity turned the tables without aggression. It taught them that every act of disrespect carries consequences, and that the people they mock may hold far more power than they imagine. That lesson will remain with them far longer than any angry outburst could have. Dignity ensures that the revenge is not just personal but educational. It corrects behavior, reshapes perspectives, and forces reflection. Another strength of dignified revenge is that it maintains control. When someone lashes out in anger, they lose control of the situation. Their emotions dictate their actions. But when someone chooses dignity, they stay in command. They decide when to respond, how to respond, and what message to leave behind. This control is the essence of true power. It is what separates the one who rises above from the one who falls into the trap of emotion. The CEO in the story never lost control. He waited, he observed, and he responded only once, with precision. That is why his revenge had maximum impact. Dignity also makes revenge long-lasting. Angry words fade quickly, people forget them or dismiss them as emotional reactions. But dignified revenge creates stories that live on. People retell the moment when composure triumphed over arrogance, when silence triumphed over noise, when respect triumphed over mockery. These stories inspire others, teaching them that dignity is not weakness but the sharpest form of strength. The mocked CEO's story spreads because his revenge was dignified, not chaotic. It became more than a personal victory, it became a universal example. There is a quiet beauty in revenge served with dignity. It is not about humiliation alone but about justice, balance, and self-respect. It allows the wronged person to walk away without bitterness, without guilt, and without losing face. Their victory is not just over the offender but over their own emotions. They prove to themselves and to others that they are greater than the insult, greater than the mockery, greater than the petty attempt to bring them down. And this greatness shines brighter than any act of loud retaliation ever could. The last word belongs to wisdom, not arrogance. In every conflict, every disagreement, and every encounter where egos collide, the struggle often becomes about who gets to speak last, who controls the final impression, who walks away with the sense of victory. Many mistake this for a contest of loudness or dominance, believing that whoever shouts the most or forces the sharpest insult wins. But in reality, it is not the voice of arrogance that lasts. The final word, the one remembered, is the one spoken with wisdom, patience, and clarity. Arrogance may make noise, but wisdom leaves an echo. Arrogance is impatient. It cannot wait, it cannot listen, and it cannot stop itself from rushing to prove superiority. Those who are arrogant interrupt, mock, and throw words carelessly, believing that their volume or their cruelty is what gives them strength. But arrogance lacks depth. Its words are shallow, quickly forgotten once the heat of the moment fades. They might sting briefly, but they do not endure. Wisdom, in contrast, waits. It allows arrogance to exhaust itself, to spill all of its noise into the room, and then it speaks calmly, firmly, without unnecessary force. That calmness makes wisdom unforgettable. In the story of the mocked CEO, the staff used arrogance as their weapon. They thought their laughter, their dismissive remarks, and their sense of superiority gave them control. They believed they had the last word when they ridiculed him. But true power is not found in temporary noise. It rests in the moment when wisdom finally speaks. The CEO did not need to raise his voice or trade insults. He simply revealed the truth of who he was, and in that moment, the balance shifted completely. His last word carried the weight of authority, dignity, and justice, crushing all the arrogance that came before it. Wisdom is powerful because it is measured. It does not rush to speak for the sake of being heard. It speaks only when it has something meaningful to say. That restraint gives its words value. People listen more closely because they know wisdom does not waste breath on triviality. The last word of wisdom lands with greater force because it is not cluttered with noise. It is precise, sharp, and undeniable. Arrogance may fill the air with words, but wisdom needs only a few to settle the matter once and for all. The last word belongs to wisdom because wisdom has patience. It understands timing. It knows that sometimes silence says more than 100 arguments. It waits until the right moment to speak, and when that moment comes, it does not just answer, it ends the conversation. In the airline story, the CEO's patience allowed the staff to expose their flaws fully. Had he interrupted them, argued with them, or shouted back, his words would have blended with theirs in the noise. But by waiting, by allowing arrogance to run its course, he gave his final word maximum power. Arrogance is fueled by ego, while wisdom is guided by truth. Ego speaks to protect itself, to inflate its own image, to demand recognition. It is self-centered and fragile, which is why it often lashes out. Wisdom does not seek recognition, it seeks justice, understanding, and clarity. When wisdom speaks, it does not need to convince people of its strength, the truth within the words does it naturally. That is why the last word, when spoken with wisdom, leaves no room for argument. It ends disputes not by force but by undeniable reality. The beauty of wisdom's last word is that it resonates far beyond the moment. People remember it not because it was loud but because it was true. They carry it with them, repeat it to others, and reflect on it long after the arrogance has faded. The mocked CEO's calm revelation will live in the memories of the staff, teaching them more about respect than any lecture or punishment could. Arrogance tried to dominate the moment, but wisdom defined it. That is the difference between noise and legacy. Wisdom also commands respect even from those who oppose it. Arrogance may intimidate temporarily, but it rarely earns genuine respect. People may fear an arrogant voice, but they do not admire it. Wisdom, however, commands admiration even in silence. When wisdom speaks last, even those who mocked must acknowledge it. They may not admit it openly, but inwardly they feel its weight. They know they cannot argue with it because it does not come from pride, it comes from truth. The last word belongs to wisdom because wisdom lifts the speaker above the pettiness of conflict. It refuses to be dragged down into shouting matches or childish games of one-upmanship. It rises above noise, choosing to speak only when it matters, and in doing so, it wins without having to fight. That is why the CEO's last word silenced the entire room. It was not just about revealing his position of power, it was about showing that dignity and patience carry far more strength than arrogance ever will. Arrogance always seeks to dominate, but wisdom seeks to conclude. That is the fundamental difference. Arrogance wants to win the moment, while wisdom wants to define it. Arrogance wants to impress, while wisdom wants to teach. Arrogance wants to shout louder, while wisdom wants to speak clearer. And in the end, it is clarity that people remember. The last word is not about volume but about meaning, and meaning belongs to wisdom. In every story of conflict, whether small or great, the final word determines who truly held power. The one who fills the air with arrogance may feel victorious, but when wisdom finally speaks, it reveals that the noise was empty all along. The mocked may become the teacher, the silent may become the conqueror, and the one underestimated may become the one remembered. That is why the last word always belongs to wisdom, not arrogance.